Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Bones of the Story. Today, Jen and I are going to share with you guys some of the books that have special places in our hearts. I know. I was like, what are we talking about? I forgot, even though we just decided. So, like, books that have influenced us, or like, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, and brain work, words together, sentences. Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are gaps between those, okay? Because I can't. Anywho, so yes, that's what we're going to do. And I already have three that when people ask me what are my favorite books, I give these three because it's not necessarily because they're like the best, but because they influenced me and shifted my view in reading. And that's why they're significant for me.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Would you like me to go first, Jen, so you have time to think about yours? This is kind of cheating a little bit because I already have these three established versus you have to come think about a
Okay.
list. You want to go first? You want me to?
You can go first.
Okay. So the first one on my list is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. These books are gonna like throw people, okay? Because none of them are dark romance.
Yeah.
So this was the first. So all of the books that I'm going to talk about, I've read because of book club, and I am a true believer that book club is important for two things. Book club is important for building community, and it's for reading things outside of your purview. Things that I never would have picked up on my own, things that would never have interested me, and book club gives me the foundation to be like, okay, other people enjoy this or want to discuss it. Let me give it a shot. Do I always read everything in book club? Absolutely not. I do not. But Jane Eyre was fairly relative in the early stages of one of my book clubs. One of my my very first book club that still goes on to this day. It's like we've been together like 17, 18 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we started in 2007, so whoever can do math will know the number. I can't do math. That's early in the morning.
Me neither.
So I can't tell you how long it is, but we've been together for quite a long time. And there was something so rich about this book. I mean, I truly consider it a love story, even though a lot of people don't. Like, it's a gothic romance to the bones of it. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but having to read this book with the length and outside of the normal genre that I would read at such a young age, because I think I'm in my early 20s at this point, aging
Yeah.
myself. Was I in my early 20s? I'm pretty sure I was in my early 20s. It just, it's set with me like my whole adult life. Like that is the one book that I have the most copies of. I think I have like 15 copies of this book because I have been collecting leather editions and hardback. This shelf right here, which you can't see, that whole shelf right there is nothing but Jane Eyre
Oh
and
my.
books about Charlotte Bronte and her sisters.
Oh wow.
That's how I can't pinpoint anything that's special about it, but it just changed me, and it was like a gateway drug of reading different books. Now, because I've read this, I'm very picky about my gothic romances. So when somebody says a book is a gothic romance, I judge it more harshly than when I judge other things.
Right.
But yeah, Jane Eyre will be when somebody asks me what my favorite books are, one of the first things I say is Jane Eyre.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So my first book is also completely off the wall. I think if I gave you 50 guesses, you would still never guess this book.
Ooh.
I could probably give you 150 guesses, and I don't think anybody would guess this book.
Pride and
Uh,
Prejudice,
no.
because everybody picks that. I don't.
Yeah. No. And it's it's interesting because even though okay, so let me just so the book itself, like the book is The Shack by William P. Young,
I know what you're talking about.
and I read it, gosh, I think I read it in now I'm curious as to when it came out because I'm pretty sure I
Mid
read it around
2000s.
Mm-hmm. The Shack book.
Like 8 or 9 or 10?
It's 2007.
Oh, okay.
I think I read it I think I read it a few years later. I would say I probably read it between 2007 and 2010. And that time in my life, I was dealing with my mom having an affair, and my dad didn't know, but I did. And I won't go into the whole thing, but this book approached forgiveness and God's involvement in forgiving and that kind of thing in a completely different way. I grew up Southern Baptist. For God to be portrayed as a woman was very weird. But I read it, and just it was really the first time I was presented with a different way of thinking about my religion. Because even though it was like based on Christianity, it was still different than anything I'd been taught. But because of the way it approached forgiveness, and you go through this man's story who is like, the story that you read is just absolutely tragic and so sad, but it changed the way I looked at how I felt like I was wronged in later years after kind of going through all of that. And it really allowed me to, I guess, forgive my parents for a lot of like things that happened in my life between like 16 and 19, because it was such a beautiful approach to how you handle when you've been wronged. And my trauma was nothing compared to the father, but the journey he went through to get to a place of healing, it was something that I really, really resonated with. And it's something that, even though I don't think I consider myself a Christian any longer, it's definitely something that the lesson has stayed with me in forgiveness and not holding on to anger. And because I was such an angry young adult, and it was that book that really taught me that it's not hurting anyone but myself. And if I want the life beyond what has happened to me, then I have to be soft enough to forgive people for things that, now that I'm 35 and know that all of the things that I know and have been in therapy as long as I have, that they were just doing the things that they knew how to do with the tools that they were taught. So it was just a profound book for me personally.
That maybe you shouldn't have gone. Maybe I should have did all 3 of mine first and then yours, because none of mine are gonna be that deep.
Well, that's like, I think, my only deep one. So
Mine are all surface level compared to that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I know what book you're talking about. I've never read it. It's been on my list to read, and it's not a long book.
Mm-mm.
It's a pretty short book, but
Yeah.
I didn't
And
know that's what it was about.
so the book is actually about a father's journey, like, of healing and forgiveness, after, I believe, he goes on a camping trip and his little girl gets kidnapped and murdered.
I didn't know
And
that either.
yeah, like, it's awful. It's awful. And he spirals, rightfully so. I can't remember if his marriage ends or if they're just separated or whatever, but it ends up, he goes to the cabin where it happened, and he's facing all of his demons in this cabin. And it's been years since I've read this, so I could be getting like details muddled, but from what I remember, God comes to him at the cabin and he presents himself, or God presents themselves as a woman. And there's like other characters that help him, kind of let go of anger and start towards healing and forgiveness. And I remember this one question that it really, like, it stuck with me, and I'm paraphrasing, but the father was talking to God, and I can't remember if God was in a male form at this point or not, but he's like, why did you come to me as a woman? And God was like, you were too, because I think he had some issues like with his dad too. He's like, you never would have listened if I had come to you as a woman. He's like, I am not bound by any human form or whatever. I can present to you in a way that is going to speak best for you. And I knew that that's the only way you would hear me. And it was the first time I really saw like a different way of seeing God, or like what I now consider as the universe, and broadening my spirituality in that way. But yeah, I mean, it's incredibly sad, incredibly tragic, but the lessons that you pull out of it in healing and forgiveness and living your own life after such a tragic event, like, I don't know, it fundamentally changed me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna have to add that book to my list now since I've never read it. I'm not looking forward to that. I don't. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to handle it when it came out because I was working in Borders
Mm.
at the time. So, man, we're just really aging ourselves with this episode. Maybe this was a bad topic.
Yep.
So, my second one, again, totally surface, I'm going to say is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Again, this was from my book club. It was the first sci-fi fantasy book that I had read that was, like, outside of, like, reading requirements for, like,
Mm.
school, like, when you're in high school or college, but
Yeah.
it was also the first one that the way that he wove the story and built the world, it didn't pull me out because sci-fi fantasy, you have to build up to it because especially depending on the world or the author or the book or whatever, like, that's very important, and sometimes that's a lie. Majority of the time, a lot of them will do some kind of, like, information dump at the beginning, and then you
Right.
have to, like, remember as you go and, like, make the connections, and
Yeah.
I didn't have that struggle when I read Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. There was just something about it that just pulled me in, like, from the first chapter. And this was also fairly new in book club. I think we'd been together maybe 2 or 3 years when this came out and we read it because I think it came out, like, again around the same time, 2007, 8, somewhere around there, and then we read it, and it opened up a whole new genre for me. Now, did I start, like, going, like, high core, I'm just gonna start reading and devouring all the sci-fi fantasy? No, it did not. It did
Right.
not. But it made me start looking at books that had more of those elements and less of the romance. Because
Yeah.
I was a hardcore romance junkie, paranormal romance, like all the things. And so it just made me like, I'm not gonna gloss over or walk past. I'm gonna take a moment and, oh, could this possibly potentially be something that I could read? And yeah, it opened up a lot of doors for me. I think I was just in that time, again, because book club is about, pushing those boundaries of what you read. There are
Yeah.
very few times, all my books are from book club, I'm just gonna give that disclaimer, that a book is just fundamentally being like, opened my eyes just to whatever it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson now. I own almost all of his books. I haven't read all of his books, but I support,
Yeah.
and you know, went to his convention last year. Like, he just his magic system. Ugh, we'll do an episode on magic systems because that man is a genius when it comes to magic systems.
I love
So
it.
that's my number 2.
Now, this is not going to surprise if you have been listening to the podcast for any length of time. No one is going to be
Wait,
surprised.
let me get my shocked face ready. Okay,
Are you ready? Do you
I'm
want to
ready.
say what it is?
Yeah,
Okay. What is it?
it's Silver Flame.
Yep.
What? That one influenced you in some way? No, I can't believe it.
I know. It's a shock. Yeah.
So shocking. Gosh, tell me more.
Yeah, I mean the entire ACOTAR series is what got me back into reading. But yeah, I mean, I've talked about Akasif 105 times, I feel like, on here, but it's I named my horse Cassian. Like, that should be enough. Like,
No.
that's really all you need to know. And not in like a, oh my god, I think he's hot kind of way, but in a, oh my god, he was everything Nesta needed at the worst part of her life, and he helped save her kind of way.
I'm glad you clarified that because I was going to be like, some people might not take that as a compliment that you named your horse after him. So
Well, it's like my
context is important, people.
yeah, my gamer tag on Halo is Nesta something, and Mike kind of looked at me. He's like, "You have a horse named Cassian, and you're considering yourself Nesta? Is there something you need to tell me?" I'm like, "No, babe. Your name's already Mike, okay?"
We can't change your name, dang it.
Just gotta be married to Mike for the rest of my life. It's fine.
You can get him a named badge for Halloween. Cassian.
Yes.
We'll do
Although
too.
he's bald, so he might need a wig and a name tag.
Maybe somebody pulled a prank on him and his head. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
maybe he did something to piss Nesta off in the house. The Wind House decided to be like, "Well, watch this." Okay.
Oh.
Because maybe Nesta was having a bad hair day or whatever, and he made some kind of cackle, and the house is like, "You do not disrespect the lady of this house."
Yeah, I like it.
So you
House's
could,
wind got her back.
yeah. I'll write it. Well, never mind. Never mind. I was
What?
gonna say I was gonna say I could, help write like the scene for you guys, but then I just don't think that that would be appropriate for whatever role play you're gonna be doing.
Oh
Ugh,
no. Yep. All
yeah.
right.
What time is it? Whew, okay, that was a good chuckle.
It was.
So my third one. This one I think I read 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. Mid to and again, it's from book club, like I said. It's called The Storied Life of AJ Fikry. I loved this book. And I think what pulled me in is that it's about this dude who owns a bookstore. And I worked at a bookstore. So like I could like relate to like all the stuff that he was talking about. And that's the part that pulled me in. But for those who know me outside of the podcast, I don't like stories to where it just talks about people's everyday lives. It's just like a reality TV show. I hate reality TV show. Like, this is boring. Nothing's happening. I don't care. Like, throw in some dragons. Like, let's do something. And
Right.
it essentially is about this man who has a bookstore, and it's literally just about his everyday life. The most like boring thing that you could possibly think of. But I think because it all takes place in the bookstore, that was the trap, and it pulled me in. And it's the type of book to where, for me anyways, and we kind of talk about on the podcast, like sometimes getting to the journey through the book and how it ends can impact your whole experience with the book.
Yeah.
That is one of those books that I probably would have DNF'd it if not for book club, but I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I didn't because I ended up enjoying it.
Oh.
That's the kind of book that it was. And so again, it was at that time, I couldn't tell you what was going on in my life around that time, but forcing myself to read it and push through it and realizing that I loved it, even though any other book that we had read before or after, even now, if you give me a book that's about somebody's everyday life, I'm just like, this is garbage. I don't want to read this. That book just showed me that sometimes you don't know and a book can surprise you. And it's just stuck with me. I've read so many books, but this random literature book, because it's a fiction literature book, just there's nothing special about it. There's nothing, and I can say that about like all three of these books, and people will probably argue, and that's fine, but this is my opinion. But in my world, there's nothing special that happens in these books.
Right.
Right? So Jane Eyre is the same thing. It's about this woman's life. We go through her life and how she conquers things and her religion and her relationships, and it could be so boring, but there's just I think a lot of things play into the books, not just the writing style, but where you are at personally when you read them, because that's what a mood reader is. That's just what I am. If I had read it at a different time in my life, I maybe not have enjoyed it, or maybe I would have enjoyed it more. Oh, I don't think I can enjoy it more because these are my top 3, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's
Yeah.
just and I can't tell you on any of these things. I can only speculate because they have stayed with me more than any other books
Yeah.
I've read.
Hmm.
I love AJ Fikry. I refuse to watch the movie. I refuse to watch the movie. I can't do it because I think it would make me hate it,
Yeah, I could see that.
and I don't want to. I've had people who've read the book and watched the movie, and I had people who've just watched the movie and told me this wasn't very good. And I'm like, if you didn't read the book and you watched the movie and you said that it wasn't very good, I'm not watching the movie.
Right. Yeah.
When I read books, it plays a movie in my head.
Right.
So I'm okay. I get to make up the rules.
Yeah.
So those are my 3.
I don't know what my third, like, I feel like,
You don't have to have a theory.
well, it's one of those, like, I can't, I'm trying to decide between 3 books.
I mean, you could do some honorary mentions. I can come up with some honorary mentions.
Well, like, okay, so I'm going to tell you all 3.
Okay, do it.
So, and they each have different reasons. So, the first one, the one that I actually wrote down first, is The Awakening by Kate Chopin.
Chopin.
Sure.
Chopin.
It's, and you and I have talked about this
Mm-hmm.
book before. It is
It's a
about
short
a
story.
woman. Yep. Oh, biscuits and gravy.
Oh, that sounds really good.
I know. Yes. It is an 1899 novel set in the late 19th century Louisiana, and it's about a wife and a mother in that time period. So, hello. And basically it's her finding herself outside of being a wife and mother. And honestly kind of her grief in the role that she plays in her life, being needed and being, you know, whatever. And she ends up, I believe, having an affair. And I read this as part of required reading in high school. So, yeah, that's what I thought. So, I read this while knowing about my mom's affair. And it gave me a lot of, I mean, I already had a lot of empathy for my mom at the time because of things happening in the house. But this book, I feel like, gave me an inside look of what I felt like she was struggling with internally. And at the end of the book, the mom actually walks out into the ocean and you don't know if she makes it or not. Like it's an ambiguous ending. And I don't know, it was just a book that really impacted me at the time that I read it. Like I wouldn't say it holds a lot of weight with me like today. It's not something I would probably read again. but at that time in my life, it was like a bucket of ice water for me. And then the other two are the Bridge Kingdom duet, Bridge Kingdom and Traitor Queen, which were I mean, that duet, I don't even know how to explain the way I feel about that duet. I have read it 4 times, I think, and I don't reread stuff. I think it was the first duet that I was, or like really the first, probably, yeah, I mean, it's a duet, but like the first books that I felt so sucked into the story and so anxious for what was happening. Like, you really didn't know if everything was going to be okay at the end. And I loved that. I loved the writing style. I loved the character development. I loved that, it wasn't a quick fix. It was very like, I mean, even at the end of book 2, Laura and Aaron are okay, but they're not like on solid footing. So it's just, I don't know. It's such a beautiful, beautiful story. And I'm so glad it's getting the recognition that it deserves now that it's been written and like out for, I don't know, almost 10 years.
Wait, what? Bridge Kingdom's been out for 10 years?
I think, well, not quite. I think it's 8 years, but I think Bridge Kingdom was published in 2017.
No way. That's crazy.
Okay, sorry, 2018. So 7 years.
I mean, still.
Yeah. I mean, it's been out for a while, and it's really only been in the last probably couple of years that it's really getting the recognition it deserves. And then my other one, Sinner's Duet.
Oh, okay.
I feel like that duet, like for me, that duet is the perfect framework for a hopeful dark romance. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Because it is dark in the first book. And, and then in the second you have this like whole turnaround with them. And I also really love like the black and white aspect
Cover.
of like the covers and like how that matches the characters and like you just, I don't know, I love all of the little things about that duet. So
Okay.
that was the duet that I was like, okay, like if I could read dark romance like this, I'm in.
I don't.
So now, so like I don't know so just there you go, pick one or do all of them
I mean, you can have them all.
now.
I don't know if I've read anything recently that I would say has influenced me in some way.
Yeah,
And sometimes you don't know. You don't know until you
right.
know, and you don't know until
Yeah,
later when something triggers it, or it's like 8 years down the road and you're like, oh, that was a pivotal moment. I can see the change that has reflected after that.
right.
I will say, though, because you brought up a short story, there's one short story that I read when I was doing my undergrad degree in a literature course, a really short story. It's called Videotape.
Uh-huh.
It's like less than like 20 pages, if I remember correctly, because books in your literature textbook aren't, or short stories aren't always that long.
Right.
But it taught me it reaffirmed that everybody can read the same story and we're all going to have different perspectives
Mhm.
and we're all going to interpret it different ways. And it reinforces that sometimes the narrator can be unreliable and is tricking you on purpose. And I know this is going to sound probably really
Ooh.
weird because you're supposed to learn all of this, as you read. But this one, the way that this professor taught this class is we would read the assignment and then we would come in and it would be an open conversation, an open debate, an open whatever you want to call it. It wasn't him preaching at us or lecturing at us. It was like, okay, let's break this story down. Let's talk about it. And to hear my classmates say, oh, da 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 da, this, and
Yeah.
this. And literally everybody is in agreement but me, which that should not surprise anybody.
So true.
It should surprise I can't remember like all the things, but I just remember like adamantly being like, no, it's this, and here's why, and here are the things that I have pulled out of this story to back up my
Right.
claim. So to give some foundation of what this story is there's some kind of like road rage or something that happens on the highway, but that's not what the story is supposed to be about. So the narrator is seeing this video clip, I think, on the news because some little girl or her family had a video camera. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. In the car, and she's just playing around with it, and you're seeing the cars on the highway or the street or whatever it is, but then something happens. I can't remember if it's road rage or somebody shoots somebody, just something violent happens, but the camera still records. And this also taught me that you have to read almost all the words. So like one part of it is, as the person who's watching the news clipping, he's trying to justify that it's okay for him to continue watching this violent scene take place because the video is still recording. That's his justification. The video is still recording, therefore the little girl must still be watching. And so everybody agreed with that. And I'm like, no, because if you read the sentence, it says that it, like, the videotape like shook and like there was like a clunk. I'm like, to me, that indicates that the little girl probably dropped it on the back of the dash, the back, whatever you call the back where the
Right.
windshield is, and then probably ducked down. She was more worried about herself than about whatever the camera was doing. The camera is an inanimate object. That wasn't the important aspect for her. It just happened to fall in a place that still continued to record whatever this was. So I can't believe I forgot. See, it's still stuck with this. That was not too long ago, but it was over 10 years ago, I think, that I read this short story. And it just, and I think taking this literature class and the way that he taught it and the way that we had to break down, which is probably why I nitpick things that we read.
Right. Yeah.
So see, I didn't realize this was as pivotal until maybe right now. So, but that short story, or and I don't remember it all, but I just remember all of these things and this feeling and like hearing all these people and like being on the opposite end, but the professor being really good and being like, okay, does anybody have a counter argument? Like, it was just, he was a great professor.
I love those kinds of discussions.
Yeah.
I took like a movie. I can't remember what it was called, but basically we would watch films and then you would analyze different aspects of the film. Drove my mom crazy because then I did it with every movie that we watched, and I could like figure things out ahead of time because like you're analyzing things that are happening. Drove my mom nuts. I remember, I can like picture it, where we were watching this movie and this person's, and I think it's called, is it a motif where they have like a certain sound, or I think it's always a sound where like when they come onto the screen that sound happens. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I don't want to answer as an English major because I don't want this to be held against me. I don't think motif is the right word,
You're
though.
wait. Okay, so
Is it a different word because it's
a short succession of notes producing a single impression. So
maybe?
maybe we're not going to deep dive into this. It's not important. But
I hear that we're going to deep dive into it later. That's what I heard.
but we were watching this like murder mystery, and we're in like the first 10 minutes, and at the beginning of the movie you hear a Zippo, like a lighter, and you hear it a few times, and then you're like a little bit into the movie and this character comes in and he uses a Zippo, and I was like, oh my god, I think he's the killer. And my mom had seen it with my dad a couple nights prior, and she looked at me, she's like, how the fuck did you know that? It's been 10 minutes. Like, she was pissed.
That's hilarious.
My whole point is I loved the discussions that we would have in that class, and argue like the different points of kind of like what you were saying, where even though you're watching or absorbing the same thing, it hits you different for whatever reason.
Mhm. So now that you've mentioned that, this is totally out of, topic for this conversation, but I'm pretty good about figuring out who the bad people are, and I'm wondering if I'm subconsciously picking up on those
Yeah,
clues.
especially as readers, we're constantly looking for context and clues and what's a red herring and what's, an actual clue. So I
Mhm.
totally think that's the case.
Okay. Hmm. There's a film and literature class
Film
that's
and
being taught this
literature.
summer that I was
Maybe
not
that's what it was.
that's what I was not interested in, but maybe now I should take
I mean,
it.
it was high school, and I wish I could remember the teacher's name, but it was. I mean, I've been out of high school now for, we won't go into that, a long time.
We've already aged ourselves. Everybody knows how old you are. You already said
That's
it,
true.
unless you want me to take that
No, I
out.
don't care. 17 years ago, God. And I mean, it's something that I think about. I mean, I probably think about that class a couple of times a year at least.
Mhm.
So it was, yeah, had that impact.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I could probably come up with 2 more to match yours, but I don't. Oh, I will say one. Okay. I should have mentioned this one and I didn't think about it. So, when book again, this is a book club book. Everything just stems around book club. Like that's for those who don't know, like book club and books are like my whole identity. In case you didn't catch on to this. We somebody had picked a book, and I'm going to tell the story before I tell the book. Somebody had picked a book that I did not want to read. It was a topic that I don't like reading about. Not because I don't believe it, but just because it's a very sad topic. And I was like, "You know what?" And this was probably this wasn't at the time to where I was like, I have to read every single book club book, but it was kind of that I need to read every single book club because, this is kind of like a binding agreement that everybody's going to read the book so we can have a discussion. And me, I want to be able to discuss all aspects of it. So I hadn't got to the point in my life where I am now to where if I don't like something, I just don't fucking read it. I don't waste space on it.
Right,
So I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get an audio book. I'm going to get it on audio from the library. Got the disc because back then we used to have CD players in our car. And I'm just gonna listen to it on my way to and from work because would have to drive to Fort Worth, so, 20, 30-minute drive there and back, so I was like, "It's pretty good," and I'm like, "I'm just gonna if I catch it, I catch it, if I don't, I don't." The whole point of it was to just say that I had read the
right.
book. So this was, I wanna say, like, my first audiobook. I'm pretty sure this was my first audiobook. The narrator was fucking phenomenal. I fell in love with the way that he wove the story.
Mhm.
I fell in love with the story. And then when you get to the ending and you figure out, well, maybe not the ending. I think I might have figured it out way before then. But so the book is The Book Thief.
Oh god.
I try not to read things about the
Oh
Holocaust
god, I
because it's
can't.
just gut wrenching. But because the book was told from the perspective of death and he is the narrator, oh my
I didn't know
gosh.
that.
Love the book. Yes. Sorry, spoiler. Yeah, it's told from the perspective of death, and it hooked me. I was just trying to listen and absorb things by osmosis,
Right.
like, not really pay attention, and I fooled myself. Myself was like, "No, that's not gonna happen. You're gonna actually love this book." And that was a pivotal moment of audio, and then I learned really quickly after that, that not all
Is
audio
this
narrators are good.
so true.
And so what I started to do at that point was that I would pick the audiobooks for the books that I really didn't care
Yeah,
for and either just listen to them and then that way I could at least speak on the topic or the
yeah,
book, or sometimes I would get sucked into them. And so it was a win-win. I got to say I finished the book whether I liked it or not and had things to speak about or get sucked into it. And so that was my introduction to audiobooks, personally,
That's so
as a
cool.
self-discovery.
I love that story,
Yeah.
even though I don't know if I will ever be able to read The Book Thief as many times.
I would not recommend reading it. I would recommend listening
Well,
to
that's what I
it.
mean. I don't know that I don't even know if I could listen. I'm really bad about
You
challenging myself to read stuff that I know is going to, like, emotionally impact me, because
and it will.
I have to be really, really selective on, like, real
Mhm.
life stuff, because I will sit in those emotions for days if I'm not careful.
Yeah, but man, that story.
Yeah.
I think it helps. And I again, this was a long time ago. I own the book, but I don't think I've ever reread it or re-listened to it. It was just the one time because that is just not a content that I want to read multiple times. But I think it helped create a, I don't want to say disconnect, but at least a distance, because it's not from their perspective. It's an outsider's perspective
Right.
who is watching this little girl or seeing this girl through her journey. So it kind of has a barrier of protection, but not really, because it is death. And so death does happen and take place around this little girl. Look, I've got fucking goosebumps. Whoo, man. Ugh. But I've never watched the movie. I don't think I probably will never watch the movie. I probably should never say never, because who knows what will happen. But yeah, The Book Thief. Ugh. And it's historical fiction, and I'm not a big fan of historical fiction, but this one, I didn't pick it. Somebody else picked it, and I just listened to it, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think I matched yours. Did I match all of yours? Maybe I'm one short, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
I think so.
But yeah, so those are our stories that have influenced us in some way, shape, or form. The only thing Bridge Kingdom did for me was give me nightmares about papers. So can we call that influential? Probably. Okay, because it was in my subconscious for like 3 days. Okay.
Oh god, those papers. You were so stressed about those papers. So
So fucking
funny.
stressed. Something so random out of everything that's happening, death, mayhem, destruction. I'm like, no, it's
It's
the fucking pieces of paper. If that doesn't tell you about my crafting and paper heart, I don't know what does. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Mm-mm.
okay. This was a good talk.
It was.
Definitely outside of our normal. So, this just goes to show that we do read things outside of romance. Not always.
Yeah, not often, but it happens.
It does. Blame it on book club. Book club. Book club is a positive influence, but it's also a negative influence when it's got you reading things you don't want to read.
Yeah, but
And then you end up liking it
also the
anyways.
point. So,
That is very the point. Yes, I love. I've got too many book clubs.
yeah.
I'm probably going to have to cut down either in the fall or next year. I don't think I can do all my book clubs in a PhD program. I just don't think that that's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, let me take that back. It is possible. I just don't want to give that much energy.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
So, are we good?
Yeah, I think so. All right, friends, audience, people, humans, hopefully. I mean, dogs are probably listening to you. It's fine, but they can't tag us on Instagram or
Pets, animals, stuffed animals.
stuffed animals. All right, so y'all share what books have influenced you, whether it's something that just profoundly changed your life or just something that introduced you to a new genre or a new book that you didn't think you would enjoy. Tag us on Instagram and let us know at Bones of the Story, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on the journey into the shadows of love, where dark romance stories come to light.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Bones of the Story as much as we did. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us.
And to stay updated on all things dark romance, follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
We'd also love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, ideas, or even your own dark romance stories with us. Drop us a line at bonesofthestory@gmail.com.
Remember, our next tantalizing episode is just around the corner, so keep your hearts open and your senses sharp.
Until then, embrace the darkness and let the stories continue to stir your deepest desires.
This is Misty
And Jen,
signing off
from Bones of the Story.